Hi, so today is day 24 of March Madness, which is leg pull front and leg pull back. So leg pull is an exercise which requires quite a lot of load on the wrists. So if that isn't suitable for you, there is an option you could do on elbows. So I'll try to cover that as well. So for me, this is a really significant exercise because I was involved in a car accident some years ago, which did shatter my distal radius in my left wrist. So unfortunately, the fracture didn't heal, so I required surgery, which meant it was plated and lots of screws. So I joke I have like a metal Mickey wrist. But I am hugely grateful to Pilates and osteopathy, which has enabled me to get anywhere close to doing leg pull front or leg pull back. So it's required a long time to get back towards this. So for me, it's a significant milestone in the classical mat repertoire. So I'm going to show you some options, some variations. If it's tricky for you to weight bear through your wrist for whatever reason, there are options you can do on elbows if you need to. So I'll try to cover those as well. So initially we'll begin in 4-point kneeling if possible, otherwise just hang on and I'll go through your other options. Okay, so I'm coming into 4-point kneeling, arms under shoulders, knees under hips. Try to find your neutral position here. So I'm pressing the floor away. Those shoulder blades are active around the rib cage. They're not hunched up to my ears and I'm not sinking down towards the ground. So the neck is long. It may improve the wrist comfort if you spread out the fingers and maybe draw the fingertips up towards you a little bit. Consider your elbow position. We don't want locked out completely, but they do need to lengthen to give you support in this position. So it may be, for some of you, inner elbow crease face in, otherwise it might be that an elbow crease and your biceps face forward, so we're more open across the chest and the collarbones. So I've got the alignment of my pelvis, I'm pressing the floor away, scooping the tummy. So our first building block of this exercise is your tabletop leg and then tabletop arm. And as I mentioned before, if this 4-point kneeling position is not possible for your wrist, you could come onto elbows and press the floor away and still do the work with your leg, but keeping your bottom up in the air. So I'm going to come back to my 4-point kneeling position. So breath and scoop, just slide one leg away. So keep that pelvis as square as you can. Option to float it up if you want, or just stick with the slide, but try to minimize any shift in the pelvis and then lower and glide back in again. So breath and center, sliding that other leg away. Breath, keep scoop, maybe floating it up, keeping everything as square as you can, and then lower and glide back in again. And then you could do the arms, so possibly on their own to begin with. So as you breathe and center, slide, maybe lift, lower and come back in. Slide the other arm as you breathe out, center, lift, lower and come back in. So as either limbs go away, you're maintaining that stability through your spine. And you're definitely keeping that center really strongly engaged. So once you've mastered legs and arms separately, you could put them together and do those opposites. So still pressing the floor away, breath and center, slide one leg, opposite arm. You could stick with the slide or you could float both up, lower and glide back in again. So still your focus is to minimize any shift in the spine or your low back. Then once you've got the hang of that, some other progressions which will help you get towards the leg pull front are that if you can curl the toes underneath you, I've still got the legs hip width, I'm going to keep my spine neutral, and breath and center, I'm going to just see if I can hover up and breathe there for a few breaths, like I'm ready to pounce, and then lower. If that's too much tension or any issues for shoulders, arms or wrists, you come back to the previous version, but you can breath and center and hover up. So everything else should be the same shape. And the other progression or option that might be helpful is you do your tabletop arm and your leg, and I'm just going to float here. So I'm pressing the floor away with my hand, with my supporting leg for a few breaths, almost as if I'm suspended across the room. And then other side, slide, float, as if I'm suspended across the room. And then lowering and coming back in. And then your leg pull front is where we're going to slide both legs away. It might help to give you some stability to bring them together so you've got that connection of the inner thighs. So So that's your next stage, and the stage after that is that you're going to do that and then hover one leg away. So these options can be done on your elbows as well if you need to modify for your wrists, but still careful not to sort of sink into those shoulders. So I'm going to come back to my 4-point kneeling position. I'm going to bring my legs together just because that will give me that bit of support through my centre. So strong centre, pressing the floor away. I'm going to slide that leg away, curl the toes under, try not to let my bottom lift up towards the ceiling. Breath and scoop, I'm going to pick up that other leg. See my bottom's raised a little bit, so I'm going to just lower down. So breathing, scooping, you can just let the heels lower down towards the mat a few times and then come back from there if you need to. So the next option is we're going to do the same, but see if we can add a leg lift. So strong centre, I'm pressing away, sliding one leg, curling the toes, sliding the other. I'm going to hover that leg up and then do my forward and back, perhaps 2 or 3 times, and then coming back, regroup, check the bum's not lifted too much, other leg, forward, back, a few times, and then I'm going to lower, return, and just come off of my hands for a moment and give them a shake out. So there's quite a strong exercise, but really work on getting those building blocks for your technique right. It's so important. So that's your leg pull front, like plank position. So leg pull back is a reverse plank, still a lot of load through the wrist. So you can do some other versions which I'll try to cover with you now. So I'm going to come to seated. I'm going to keep the legs bent and glue the legs and feet together. So option 1, if the weight bearing through the wrist is tricky, you could come back onto your elbow. So we were kind of in this position a bit earlier for your hip twists. So breath and center, I'm going to see if I can hover my bottom up, and I'm trying to keep that length across the shoulders. Okay, I'm not sinking into the shoulders. It's a lot of, it's like a chest expansion type movement. Option 2 is that you still be in this position, but you'd have the arms behind you. Palms would be facing this way, so fingers would be facing that way with the arms lengthened. For me, because of the wrist injury I told you about my left wrist, that is a bit tricky for me to load it too much there. So I prefer to turn the arms out to the side, and thankfully because I'm on this raised mat, that helps me because I've got that edge to kind of hang off to or just wrap my hands around, so I'm not completely loaded through the wrist. So this is the version I'm going to work on. So open chest, smiley collarbones, keeping that openness. I'm going to hover up my bottom, so a bit like a reverse double knee fold, I suppose. So breath and centre, and I'm going to float up and then inhale to lower. So I'm trying to keep my spine in neutral. You could also come up, add a knee fold, lower, knee fold, lower, and then coming back down. And then once you've practiced those options, your next option is that you come up with the legs lengthened. So I'm going to glue the legs together, keep that openness across the chest and the spine. So breath and centre, I'm floating up. So ideally straight line, neck, head all the way down to my heels, and I'm going to slowly lower back down. So breath and centre, gliding up, and then slowly lowering it down. You could also add on that you could lift one leg or slide the other leg in, but for me that's enough for today, and I hope that's given you some options and ideas to play with as well. So let me know how you get on. Do give your wrists some TLC after that work if you need to do some circles or hands together. Either way, just shake them out a little bit, and I hope that you can enjoy that and continue to build your strength and work with that. Thank you.